Today we are going to finish with the dancing plague, and then we're going to move on to smallpox. Outbreaks of mass hysteria often begin when there is an underlying shared stress factor in the population. It usually occurs in a group of people who don't have a lot of power. Some people say that the outbreak in Tanzania might have occurred because the country had just become independent, and everyone in the community was under a tremendous amount of stress. In 2012, a group of teenage girls from Leroy, New York, began to simultaneously develop tics that caused them to twitch uncontrollably. Once the event was labeled as a bout of mass hysteria, it prompted one of their guardians to remark to the New York Times Magazine, "What, are we living in the 1600s?" Though the doctors seemed to think the girls' symptoms were related to the stresses of their lives, some did get better when put on antibiotics. Today, it often seems we consider physical wellness to be entirely separate from our emotional state. Of course, diseases occur independent of mental states, but it is also true that given enough stress, people's internal miseries can manifest themselves physically. In a culture where being tough or cool means holding back most of your emotions almost all of the time, we are very used to suppressing loneliness or stress or sadness, and just deciding not to think about these feelings rather than admitting them. That's not an approach that works out really well. Extreme stress can manifest in real, physical, horrifying ways. It's great to deal with internal turmoil before you dance your feet off. And if you feel you might, talk to someone. All right, the next chapter is about smallpox. The impact of the Black Death on European nations from the 14th to the 17th century is remembered as one of the more horrifying chapters in history. However, European civilization endured. Some of the greatest artistic accomplishments in the Western world coexisted with the plague. Shakespeare's brother and sisters and his son died of the bubonic plague. Theaters were closed due to the plague during his lifetime. But life went on in the face of death. So you might say, plague is not such a big deal then, really. However, I imagine a good bit of genius and human accomplishment were lost to the bubonic plague, even if European society did not completely collapse. But if your definition of a big deal is the total destruction of a civilization, here is the plague for you. After being exposed to smallpox, the Aztec and Incan societies were devastated almost instantly. One year they were among the greatest civilizations in the world. The next year, they basically didn't exist. A frontrunner in historical outcomes you would not expect was Francisco Pizarro's defeat of the Inca monarch Atahualpa, who was regarded as a god in 1532. Atahualpa had an army of 80,000 soldiers. Pizarro had a force of 168 men, of whom only 62 had horses. Not only did the Spanish army kill 7,000 Incan soldiers the first night, Pizarro supposedly captured Atahualpa within minutes. After he did so, he promised Atahualpa, "We treat our prisoners and conquered enemies with mercy and only make war on those who make war on us. In being able to destroy them, we refrain from doing so, but rather pardon them." Anyone who has read about the Spaniards' treatment of native populations during this period will recognize this statement as being the opposite of true. I can't even call it a lie, because there are plenty of big fish stories and friendly white lies that are not the precise opposite of everything your society has ever done. Pizarro then demanded an entire room, 22 feet long by 17 feet wide, full of gold, in exchange for Atahualpa's life. The Incas peacefully provided the gold in the hope that the Spaniards would take it and leave. Pizarro then killed Atahualpa. Before the monarch died, he promised to convert to Christianity if only the Spaniards would not burn him at the stake, as Incas believed that if a body was burned, it could not ascend to the afterlife. They strangled him. Then, after he was dead, they set fire to his corpse. All that in spite of the fact that, of the Incas, conquistador Pedro Cieza de Leon wrote, "Had Pizarro wished to convert the Incas with kind words, his people were so gentle and peaceful that all he needed was those few people with him, and he could have done it." Between the conquistadors and the Spanish Inquisition, the Spaniards have a long history of doing unimaginably terrible stuff through the 16th century. We'll come back to this next time.